Today's guests are Penelope Canan and Hinkle. We join their conversation in the faculty lounge.
In 1990, because I joined the Environmentally Endangered Land Selection and Management Committee in 1990, and after 4 years became chair of that committee, which is a scientific advisory group to the county commission. And the way the program is set up, you'll love this, the way the program is set up is that the tax dollars can go to buy land that is recommended by a science advisory committee only. And it has to be a willing seller. So there you go, willing seller. That is a very palatable, it's a very biggie. The committee reviewed all the natural resources in Brevard County, reviewed the ecological systems that are in Brevard County, and we chose.
So you prioritized?
We prioritized and have recommended properties to be bought for conservation and also help develop the management plans for those. And the effort is designed to preserve natural habitat in Brevard County as well as protect biological diversity. So far, in the first 10 years of the program, that was 90 through 2000, we protected something like 20,000 acres of land. Another referendum was brought forward because the first one was so successful, that another one came on board for bonding up to $75 million to buy additional land.
Have you spent that?
We probably, a couple weeks ago, we recommended properties to be purchased that would pretty much take the full amount of dollars. But the point is, this is a grassroots effort of people that are concerned about conservation, that want to see the natural, and they understand the ecological services of natural habitat, wetlands and ecosystems.
Which is a new recognition, I mean a new awareness, I believe. I mean, maybe some of the population has understood ecosystem services well, but I think a lot of us have taken it for granted for so long and been cavalier about its protection.
Well, one of the things that we determined in our efforts in Brevard County in setting aside these conservation areas is that we did not want to be an island, you know, a coastal island. So we started working with surrounding counties saying, well, what can we do as a group to optimize the conservation value of the properties that we're protecting and that you're protecting? How can we build this network? And
since
about that time,
ecosystems don't know about political boundaries.
That's right. A black bear doesn't care whether it's in Volusia County or Brevard County or Orange County.
Don't you touch that berry, it's on that side.
As long as it's got food and habitat, right? So in order to get more of a regional context of the conservation, and we started working with other counties. And about that time, myregion.org came along.
So you're part of it.
Yeah, so we, and
wonderful.
Linda Chapin, of course, provided the leadership.
Well, when I came here last year, well, to interview, because I've only been here 1 year. And you've been here a few months, right?
I've been in Florida a long time, but I've been at UCF since July.
Right.
Yeah.
And my family's from Florida. I'm third generation.
Oh.
But I've just been here 1 year at UCF. Otherwise, I've been in the West. I've been in Denver, Colorado for years. And then right before I came here, I was in Japan for 2 years. So Florida's new to me as a home. But when I was interviewing, I was very impressed about the region, the regional research, the regional orientation, the effort to create a regional identity, both about the land, about its resources, but also about its culture, a regional culture. And everyone was talking about myregion.org and Linda Chapin. And I was driving home from the interview and heard about the Linda Chapin Theater. And then I thought, oh my goodness, this is wonderful that she is now at the university, that the metropolitan centers here, that the data have, lots of data had already been collected about the region in terms of its, a lot of its population and its organization, its values,
transportation
and
corridors, needs for.
That's right.
That to me is like the preview of what we need to understand. That's the information we need as a society to make smart decisions as we deal with these global and these large changes that are going to happen. And
can we get a carbon budget for the region?
Oh, I'm sure we can.
That's what I want to do.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you?
Well, I understand UCF developed a carbon budget for the university, is that right?
I think they've talked about a carbon footprint, but they don't have it, you know, they've got it in sectors, I think, of kind of like energy used for transportation and for electricity demand, but which is $1 million a month. Did you know that?
Well, no.
That's how much we pay for our electricity. So there's an incentive to reduce the reduce that demand or to change the the types of sources. But I'm talking about an accurate carbon budget.
I think it could be done. It would be rather expensive to make the measurements, but
how would you do it?
Well, you would do it by estimating a biomass, and you'd estimating the amount of carbon taken up by natural systems and the amount of carbon generated by society, by people, by cars, by
the human dimensions.
The human dimensions, and then you just balance that. It's like sort of like balancing a checkbook. But
would you have to do soil carbon and
you do
root carbon and leaf carbon?
Carbon storage. Yes, you'd have to. But there is a program in Europe and also in the U.S. In U.S. it's called Ameriflux, and it's basically a network of towers that have been designed to look at carbon flux from ecosystems so that you can make an estimate of whether an ecosystem is a carbon sequester or a carbon contributor. And you mentioned that, and I'm very interested in that as a form of as a point of research at UCF, because if you look at UCF campus, it's a metropolitan campus, yet there's a lot of green space preserved on campus. So you could ask the questions, well, what kind of carbon footprint do we have in our human infrastructure dimension, and what are the green spaces? What is our natural environment that we're protecting there doing in terms of offsetting that carbon?
Now, is that what is the kind of purview of Martin Quigley's new position?
Well, he's in the Arboretum and working to manage the ecosystems, the Arboretum and the ecosystems on campus in a natural environments. One of the things that we're doing in the biology department with the National Ecological Observatory Network is the NEON. Is that we're working with the University of Florida, which has a large natural reserve near Gainesville called the Ordway-Swisher Reserve. We're working with the Jones Ecological Research Center in Georgia, which has several thousand acres of pine flatwoods. The Savannah River Ecology Lab near Athens. And the Archbold Biological Station, which is to the south on Lake Wells Ridge. And we've put together a team to look at ecosystem dynamics within native Florida ecosystems. And UCF will represent the urban environment within that experimental context. Some of them are very natural, wild areas. UCF has the mix of urban and green space.
You're talking about the UCF campus, or
the
UCF
campus
is responsible for, like, city, like Orlando as a urban?
Well, we would use the campus as a research site. It would actually be a site for monitoring and taking measurements and things related to
of things like residence and office buildings and transportation.
And natural ecosystems.
But we don't have manufacturing.
No.
I mean, when you talk about urban.
Right. Well, you could certainly look at the whole Orlando area, which would be we would be the urban end of that spectrum from natural wildlands to urbanized areas.
You know, that's the sociology department has this new PhD track in urban and environmental sociology. So maybe we could be helpful as you're characterizing the urban part of that study.
Absolutely. And there is a science called urban ecology.
And urban sociology.
And there are urban ecologists, right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So I'm excited about that, and I'm excited about the fact that UCF is so forward-looking and so supportive of forward-looking.
That's why I came.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
How about this new undergraduate theme?
Well, you're involved in that. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, when I came here, I knew about something called Focus the Nation, which was an effort to get 1,000 universities to look toward this generation's contribution to solutions to climate change, because this generation that we're involved in educating is going to be the generation that's going to have to make a difference about global climate change. And this decade is so critical to making the right decisions about investments that will give opportunities for adaptation and mitigation in the future as we look toward 2050. And so this thing called Focus the Nation on Solutions to Climate Change was all about a culminating national teach-in day across 1,000 campuses on January 31st, 2008. So when I came here, I wanted us to plant the flag of UCF among the others. We did that, and now I know that Focus the Nation has more than 800 campuses all geared for this. And now, incidentally, UCF has been chosen to be the kickoff site for the night before. So on January 30th, 2008, UCF will host a national webcast, and it will be hooked up to at least 800 other universities. And then in our teach-in on January 31st, we're also hooked up through the Lou Fry Institute to high schools all over the country for thousands of students for an all-day teach-in. I hope you will teach one lecture that day.
Sure.
And this will be piped to hundreds of high schools, as well as be part of this national dialogue about solutions. Well, I started going to talk about this around campus, and I went to the dean, Associate Dean Michael Johnson.
Yes.
And the College of Science endorsed Focus the Nation, and by today the Faculty Senate has endorsed it, different departments have endorsed it, and it was in that conversation that I met the Vice Provost, Allison Morrison Shetler.
Yes.
And she and I started talking, and she just ran with this idea and checked with lots of students through focus groups and other conversations about what's the thing that you're most interested in about the future. And the students overwhelmingly said the environment. So then she started thinking, I guess UCF had a common theme with a common reader for the first 2 years of general education a few years ago. And especially successful was a common theme on the occasion of the anniversary of Brown versus the Board of Education, and about segregation and overturning segregation in education in the United States some 50 years ago, I guess. Well, the common theme now, hallelujah, is for the first 2 years of education, starting this entering freshman class, the common theme is the environment, especially climate change.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great.
I know. But instead of a common reader in this age of let's do a little less paper,
Mm-hmm.
we now have a fabulous website with all sorts of resources for faculty. But it means that all the introduction to biology, introduction to communications, or introduction to speech, into sociology, into poetry, everybody is trying to weave in climate change and the environment in their introductory so that there's some thread that goes through. So it's so, this was also, I mean, I've only been here a year and I've seen such change.
Right.
And the sociology department's having this new PhD in environment and environment and urban sociology. The conservation biology PhD. There's such a movement.
Right.
To be leaders on a national scene.
Yeah, it's very encouraging.
Yeah.
I whistle on the way to work every day.
Yeah, I'm very excited.
Yeah,
that's
good,
right.
Good. Yeah, well, I'm sure we'll be a large part of that, or be a part of that.
Right.
Yeah,
and conservation biology has a big component of, it's sort of normative. I mean, just by saying conservation, it's not the pure science just saying, oh, I noticed that that species is being endangered, is it?
Well, conservation biology is really a broad science. In our program, there's a couple tracks. There's an applied track where you deal with, you know,
advocacy.
Advocacy as well as issues related to just how you manage landscape, or what you need to do to preserve habitats and preserve species. And then there's an organismal and evolutionary approach, which is more.
But now, wait a minute. Excuse me. Wouldn't the applied conservation biologists need to understand things like social movements?
Oh, absolutely. Politics and social movements and ecology and
power dynamics
and economics.
Decision making.
Right. It's very well integrated into it. And just take the example that I was discussing about Brevard County.
Right.
I mean, that's a conservation effort. But what did it include? It included the politics of getting people to buy on board and provide the resources from the public sector. It included the science to choose the areas that are most important in optimizing the conservation and the protection of biodiversity. It includes the economics of purchasing land from willing sellers and making all of those efforts, and it includes the long-term commitment of society to the management and protection of these. So, yeah, conservation biology definitely includes all aspects. But it also includes genetics. It also includes organismal biology, and that's the thing. That's one thing that really attracted me to UCF is in the biology department, is that, first of all, I've spent 24 years and 11 months at Kennedy Space Center, and so I hired a few biology graduates from UCF.
Right.
And unequivocally, they were just really good. They had really good thinking skills. They had a broad-based biology education so that they could work on multiple projects very effectively. And I was always encouraged by that. And then given the opportunity to come on board and help.
Well, the other thing that I see about UCF is a willingness to, or at least I'm finding people who are willing to cross the boundaries of their own disciplines, and that's especially evident and necessary in understanding environmental conditions and preservation, conservation. Before I came to UCF, I worked on a leave of absence from the University of Denver, where I was for 20 years. I was at the Global Carbon Project, and I was the executive director living in Tsukuba, Japan. And that was an effort to put all of the sciences together, natural and social sciences together, in something called the Earth Systems Science. Not Earth Sciences,
but Earth
Systems, which includes in the Anthropocene, which Paul Crutzen calls this era the Anthropocene, includes the social scientists. And so my sponsors were the International Geosphere Biosphere Program.
Right, I'm very familiar with it.
And the World Climate Research Program, and Diversitas, and then the International Human Dimensions Program. Those were the four that came together, said we need an Earth system science. So I was going across the world talking about integrating science. And now, and I also put on a program called Urban and Regional Carbon Management. And I wanted to bring down the global carbon budget down to a regional level and have all of those sciences together at the regional level and to do carbon management regionally. And I thought that Central Florida's myregion.org.
Perfect place to do it. Perfect.
It was the kind of the scaffold, the infrastructure of thinking and the right inputs for a regional carbon budget and decision making.
Well, I'm convinced that with that kind of vision and with the excellent integration that we have with across departments and the enthusiasm of the university, that we can certainly do that.
I think so too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you can't find that in lots of places.
No. We're growing.
Yes, we're growing, but I mean, just bringing you in is, I think, example of UCF's vision to have thinkers from other experiences coming to the campus, and now you've got this regional expertise that you've developed over these years. With your sound disciplinary background, then you can be an interdisciplinary player and lead your department in that direction.
Well, you know, conservation biology and ecology, by the nature of the science, is interdisciplinary and integrative.
Right. And sociology is kind of what we call the queen bee of the social sciences.
Oh, really?
We're supposed to know economics and politics and political science, economics, anthropology, all those, and then kind of put them together in understanding social dynamics. And so we're kind of, I guess, good partners in general from biology and sociology.
Right. Have you ever worked in the area of trying to deal with the issue of people always want to put value on the environment? They want to put value on an ecosystem. Like, what's it really worth to me? Have you dealt with those issues?
Well, like you, I started out in the 70s doing social impact assessment as part of environmental impact assessment.
Oh, yes.
And so I wrote a book at one time about citing geothermal energy in the Big Island of Hawaii. And there, the value of geothermal energy was very different for the native Hawaiians, who didn't think that you should poke a hole in Mother Earth. And the value of a high energy source to the developers who wanted to use the excess energy for manganese nodule mining, breaking up manganese nodules from the ocean bed, and the value of that service to freeze dry fruits for the papaya farmers.
Right.
So the sociologists would talk about the multiple values, depending on your position in the social structure, what would be the value of that ecosystem service.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I basically started my career dealing with energy issues. When I finished my PhD in '78, I went to work for a private company in Oak Ridge, Tennessee.
And so my PhD was '77.
Yeah.
So
we had a major project called the Strategic Petroleum Reserve Program.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yes, I sure do.
And our job was to deal with understanding the ecological impacts of doing the solution mining of the salt domes all along the Gulf Coast. These large deposits of salt, basically what they would do is drill into those and then send in water and dissolve the salt, and it would form this large container. And then that salt brine would be pumped out into the Gulf.
What you mean, that is, the solution to pollution is dilution?
No. But our job was to to evaluate the ecological effects of not only dumping the brine into the Gulf, but also building the pipelines to get the oil to the salt domes and so forth. And so basically, in the 70s, we started our careers dealing with energy issues, and we're still dealing with energy issues.
That's right.
Yeah.
And here in Hawaii, it was the same kind of thing about if they were going to have such amount of energy on the big island of Hawaii, how they were going to pump it to Oahu, which is across the second deepest trench on the ocean floor, to Oahu, which was the demand site. So we had kind of the perfect issues of not in my backyard to provide energy for those people, that we have, you know, millions of sighting things.
Yeah, and